No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on this episode, we're going to be going over part 5 in this 5-part series on getting noticed by your boss's boss. For those of you who have not listened to the last few weeks, this started as a listener question on getting noticed by their boss's boss because they felt their direct boss just wasn't doing everything that they could do in order to kind of make this person seen throughout the organization. And they wanted to know how to kind of do it on their own if they had to without making it look like they were going over their boss's head. Go back and listen to the last few episodes if you haven't. On this final episode of the series, we're going to be talking about 2 different skills, one of which is living the values and purpose of your organization, and the other is about just making sure that you're speaking up and asking for opportunities. And those 2 things, I think, this is the first time where there's not a lot of overlap between the 2 skills in a single episode here, but they are incredibly important as kind of overarching skills that you can use when looking at all of the skills of the previous episodes combined. So all the things that we talked about in terms of doing your job well and showing up consistently and doing what you say you're going to do, communicating effectively, building relationships, knowing your numbers, all those things need to be done within this thing of the values and purpose of the organization. They have to fit within that North Star, and none of this matters at all if you aren't actually executing. If you're not saying, I need to do this, I need to raise my hand and take opportunities when they come. If you're waiting for them to come to you, it's just not going to work out well for you.
I agree. I think that there's sometimes when it comes to like navigating careers and progression, a lot of times we can kind of get on our own way of just kind of like, here's the work that I do, here's the way in which I do it. While yes, it fits into the values and priorities of the organization I work for, to continue to move, you have to really get really clear around it not necessarily being about you or your approach, but how you are, to your point, how you're executing and bringing to life the priorities and the values of the organization through the work that you do. Because a lot of times, as you're considering career growth and building those relationships and getting the attention of maybe more senior leaders, it has to be clear to them that,
right,
that you are aligned with the organization's values and priorities, that you understand what they are looking to accomplish through this body of work, and that you're aware of how your skills are being utilized by yourself to bring those types of things to life. So I think that it's a good kind of like summation that you gave around realizing that all these things have to happen, but at the end of the day, the ability for you to do the work, to put yourself out there, and to make sure that it's not so much about you, but it's more about the work that you enable, that you inspire by understanding what the organization is looking to achieve is really, really important.
Right. I think I might have said this during the first episode of this series. If the goal, because this is about getting noticed by your boss's boss. If the goal of the work is to get noticed by your boss's boss, you've already failed. The goal of the work should be the work, and that will get you noticed by your boss's boss if done in the correct way. So these skills are ways to make sure that you're kind of getting credit for the work that you're doing and doing it in a way that will get you noticed. But people who are doing things in order to get noticed will come off as doing things in order to get noticed. People who are doing things because they believe it fits within the values and the purpose of the organization and their own personal value system aligns with that, and they make themselves invaluable to organizations by how they help others around them, what they give back to others around them, those are the people that get noticed by their boss's boss. And it's done in such an organic way that it would never look like you went over your boss's head in order to get noticed. You're getting noticed for the work, even if in the back of your mind you're thinking, I'm doing this because I want to get noticed. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having, selfish is the wrong word, but motivations that are self-serving, because at the end of the day, no one is going to look out for your career progression more than you are. Expecting your direct boss to carry that weight is the wrong thing to do anyway. even bosses who are great at doing it, it's not their responsibility. It's your responsibility if you want to move forward in your career. So have the intention of making sure that you're getting noticed, but don't make the work about that. Just make sure that it's done intentionally and strategically in a way that makes it the most likely to happen through the lens of this fits within the values and purpose of the organization 100%, so that your motivations are never questioned.
Yeah, no, I think it's continuing to build a leadership legacy is a summary of the interactions that you've had over time. I think it's the relationships that you build with your people. I think it's the way that you show up, to your point, in these spaces. But number one is are you good at your job? Whatever the thing is that you're responsible for, right? Are you good at that? Were you able to have a positive influence on the work that you were assigned to do as a result of the job that you have? And I think that that is, I like that you kind of walked us through that, because at the heart of it, that's what this is about. Do great work, be who you are, lead with intent, be a positive force in people's lives, inspire, develop, motivate people the way that you can. And know that a part of this, if you're continuing to look for career growth, is a part of it is your direct leader has to own making sure that you are on the right path, that you're doing the right work, that you're engaged in the right priorities, and in some instances that you're in the rooms that allow you this platform to do this other type of work, which is be aware of your surroundings, be prepared for those opportunities. Consider your communication, consider your skills that you need to have when those opportunities present themselves. But it really is, you have to really understand that so much of this is about just being great at what the thing is that you're supposed to be doing. That in itself will gain you some attention. And if you have a good leader, maybe they're not, to your point, maybe they're not this leader who's I'm going to go out there every day and advocate for my people. I'm going to make sure that your work gets highlighted on this. Maybe they're not great at that, but they are a good leader. They're not doing anything to negatively impact your career progression. They're not out there taking credit for the work that you're doing. They're just a good leader that is there to support you. They will do the part that they need to do in many instances, which is make sure that you're that when they're having conversations about the talent on their team, that you are getting the kudos for the job well done, that when it comes to ratings, reviews, bonuses, that you are a part of those types of things in a positive way. Those are ways that leaders can make sure that you are getting the credit for the work. But I also think that it lands on you as the individual to make sure that when you have those opportunities, you are ready, that you are prepared, that you have practiced, and that you are making sure that you're stepping forward with your best foot to be able to build the relationships necessary to be successful.
Right. In a lot of organizations, it's an expectation of many leaders to be able to speak on the fly about each of their people, about what they're doing, about what they're good at, what they need to work on, these kind of group talent assessments from an alignment standpoint, so that multiple leaders who are peers don't have kind of different internal criteria that they're using for who's good and who's not good. And a lot of times in organizations, leaders will sit around a table and talk it out to kind of make sure that they're all aligned on what does good look like and what does needs improvement look like. And so you need to do what you can to make sure that your boss has the ammo to be able to speak in those meetings, because even if they're not doing what they should do to, kind of verbally promote you when they can, they will be held accountable if they can't speak to what you're doing. And so the easiest way to kind of accomplish both of those things is to be very intentional on giving your boss the ammunition that they need to be able to come off as credible when they speak about you in those groups, because they will be asked. There will be a time when your boss has to explain to their boss the work that is being done on their team. And if the first thing in their mind is the work that you've been doing because you've been great about telling your boss about it and communicating with how the results have happened, they will use that information in their communications with their own boss in order to seem credible about how they talk about their team. And so you will be noticed by your boss's boss intentionally that way, even if it wasn't what your boss was going for at the time. And the other thing I want to mention here is this concept of just being intentional about raising your hand and saying, put me in, coach. You need to be able to volunteer for opportunities when they come up without it coming off like you're just trying to get ahead. So the way to do this is starting from a standpoint of, I want to get better at blank. Think about a skill you want to get better at, and then figure out what you can be doing, what project you could be working on, what thing you could be doing for the organization that helps you get better at a skill. So you don't want to go to your boss and say, I would like to get noticed by people up in the organization. What can I do to make that happen? Or what projects can you put me on to make that happen? It's, hey, I would like to get better at coaching. What can I do? What projects are being worked on right now where I can contribute, or maybe be in the room during these conversations to where I can learn more about coaching and maybe practice on some people because it's a skill I want to develop within myself. Those are much more likely to happen if it's rooted in, I want to get better at something, as opposed to, I want to get noticed by somebody, or I want to move up in my career. Saying I want to do this because I want to move up, or I want to be ready for the next promotion, comes off as too self-serving. But saying I want to get better at a skill says I want growth, but from a standpoint of, I want to become a better leader myself. And if that leads to career growth or career opportunities, then great. But the goal isn't the career opportunity. The goal is just personal growth and development. That comes off as much more kind of righteous, and you're more likely to get support on getting into those rooms and getting into those kind of task forces or work groups or project groups on different things, if that's what the motivation comes off as.
I think it's okay to say, like, I want to move up to the next job. Like, I think like people should have that mentality, right? But to your point, when you're looking for, when you're looking to gain an experience or raise your hand for something to be involved in, the right way, and besides saying, I just want to be involved because I want to be promoted, right? Like, that doesn't usually go over well, but it can be true. It can absolutely be true, and that's okay. But the right way to do that is one of two spaces. What you just described, which is, this is something I want to build my skill in. I need to get better at this. This is about my development. I'd like the opportunity to have this responsibility so I can build my skill. Or the other way is, I feel that I'm very skilled in this because of the outcomes and what I've been able to do with my team or my people. I'd like to be involved because I think I can add value. I think I can add value to others that may be wanting to develop skill in this space. So I think it's those two spaces are, I think a great way to look at it. If you're going to advocate for yourself, if you're going to volunteer yourself, raise your hand, try to want to be involved in something that gets you more exposure, that would be my suggestion. It should be positioned in one of those two places. I want to get better. This is about my development, and I'm aware of this, and I want to take the calculated risk here to take on the ownership of this so I can get better and get coaching and get feedback and development, or I'm highly skilled in this. I feel based upon these things, this is where I think I can add value to the larger organization and to the team. And that's why I'd like this responsibility to be able to have a larger influence and sharpen this skill set and bring other people along.
Right. Saying that you want to get promoted or that you want to be prepared for the next set of interviews for a particular job opening is the right thing to do. Just not in the context of something you want to do, a project you want to do, because then they'll be inherently tied together. That conversation happens first. It happens as soon as possible with your boss so that they know to be thinking about you when the next position opens up or whatever it is, because they'll be constantly looking for talent in the pipeline to fill open roles because it's their responsibility to fill open roles, and to get people promoted. So yes, definitely make sure they know that you want it. But once they know that you want it, know that that's enough. And you can remind them periodically, but keep it separate from wanting to be involved in specific projects or getting better at skills. They can be for the exact same reason. They just can't be in the exact same conversation all the time, because all the person will hear that you're talking to is, I want to get promoted. When you phrase it that way, they will inherently think that you are putting that responsibility on them. I want to get promoted. It's your job to get me there. I want to get promoted means I want to get promoted. That's it. And then have the conversations about the skills that you want to get better at, the ways you want to develop yourself separately, because then what that shows is you're taking responsibility. You want to get promoted, but you know that's your responsibility to get yourself promoted. It's amazing what your boss and others around them will shoulder themselves for people who don't come off like they are shouldering it for them. If I put the responsibility of getting me promoted on you, it will be pushed off. No one wants to feel that they've been forced that responsibility. But if you never come off that way, if you come off as like, I'm doing this all on my own, I know it's my responsibility to get myself promoted, good people and good leaders will start to feel like they have a sense of responsibility to help you get there all on their own, and it will come off in their actions. That is very different than them feeling kind of like forced into doing it. And the outcomes will be better if you kind of like allow it to happen naturally rather than kind of making people feel like it's their responsibility to do it. But it all starts with saying, put me in. I need to have this opportunity, or I want to be involved in this. And it can't be vague. It can't be, hey, the next thing that comes up, I want to be in it. It has to be, this is the skill I want to get better at. I would like to be put in situations that will help me get better at this particular skill. Talk with me about this. What can be done around this place that might expand my knowledge of this particular competency or how to get better at this thing, because it's something that I want to do for myself. Have those conversations with the right people, and they're more likely to think about you when those things come up, and give you those opportunities.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 Minute Hack. But first, a few words from our sponsors.
All right, for this episode's 1 Minute Hack, here's what I want you to do. Get out your pen and paper, and I want you to write down the priorities of your organization on one side of the paper. On the other side, I want you to write down a list of skills or competencies that you feel you could use some work in. It doesn't have to be something you're terrible at. It could just be something that you think you need to get better at in order to be prepared for the next step in your career. Look at those two lists and see where they overlap. Something that you need to get better at, but it's also a priority of the organization, something that aligns with the values and purpose and priorities of your organization. That's where you start. Those are the projects that you need to be more involved in. Something that aligns with the values, priorities, purpose of the organization, as well as something you want to get better at. Because you will get better at it while doing it, and it's something that's more likely to get you noticed because it aligns with whatever the direction of the organization is at that moment. Put yourself in those rooms and raise your hand when it comes to those particular skills and abilities you want to get better at, and you're more likely to get people saying to you, yes, we would love for you to help with this particular thing because it just so happens to be something we're working on right now, as opposed to figuring out something you want to get better at that really doesn't matter as much to the organization. This is how you get people to kind of advocate on your behalf, because the things you're trying to get better at are things that now they will see a use for you with. And if you can make those two things align, you're more likely to get kind of selected or have opportunities come up for you that make you better at those things.
Yeah, I think it's a great 1 minute hack. And we talk a lot about just kind of self-reflection and preparation in spaces like this from a development and career progression standpoint. And I think it's good to think about these types of things. Like, I think just, again, you can do the old, like, I'm going to throw my name in the hat thing, which if you can't tell by my tone, not a huge fan of.
Right.
Because what that tells me is that you actually haven't thought about preparation. You actually haven't considered all the context things that are going on. You're not ready for this potential opportunity. You just feel like you should do it to see what happens. And if you're, I believe that career kind of growth and development and opportunities should not be like a Vegas craps table where you just say, I'm just going to throw the dice and see what happens. Does it happen from time to time? Sure. Does somebody get the job that maybe it was unexpected? Does somebody show up in a way that gets them the opportunity? It does happen, but it's just as risky going into a process or going into communication or volunteering for something. If you are not prepared for that thing, it could just as likely go sideways or it could fail. And if it does that, that will have a longer term effect on future opportunities and future things that you can involve yourself in, because that's going to have a little bit of a tail on it. Not that you can't recover from it. We've all done dumb things and made mistakes and had to recover from them. I'm just saying that this level of consideration, this planning, this thinking about what is it exactly that I bring that is something that I can leverage to be able to volunteer for something, and then what am I self-aware of that I need some development in and some opportunities that I can work on and work through, and I'm willing to have the humility to stand up and say that. Like, this is a much better approach to being able to find yourself in spaces where even if it does go sideways, you're going to have some more grace, because the way in which you went about it was in a prepared way, in a very transparent way, and people were aware of what you were doing.
Right. And just over the overarching thing that I want everybody to take away from this kind of series is that there is no kind of like roadmap to this where you see every turn. This isn't like you print out MapQuest directions. I'm dating myself. MapQuest directions, and you know every turn. This is more of you're using a compass, not a map. You know the direction you want to go, but you won't know every turn. And as you go along, you're going to have to rethink some of these things as you move through it. The goal is to make sure that the decision you make at each of these steps is a strategic decision that has a higher purpose than just, I hope this works out. That's how you get noticed by people in your organization, because the people who are above you in the organization, again, they're looking for people who will do their job. They're looking for people who will do the work that they've been tasked with doing. The best way to get noticed is to show that you're the person who will do that. You're the person who will take stuff off of their plate to make their lives easier, their jobs easier, because you have the skills to do things that are aligned with the organization, that are priorities of the organization, and that your boss's boss has already been tasked with, because then that will allow them to focus on the things they want to focus on.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.